everyone, how are you? Welcome to Beyond the Cloud. In today's video, we will demonstrate how to set up a VPC endpoint to connect a privately hosted Lambda function to Amazon S3, all within a secure VPC. So we will use AWS CDK and Python to deploy this infrastructure as code, ensuring a smooth and efficient setup. So by the end of this tutorial, you will have a solid understanding of how to securely connect a Lambda to S3 in a private VPC using CDK. So if you are new to this channel, kindly like, share, subscribe and comment your thoughts. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like. I will try to make some recommended videos from you guys if you have any. So sit tight and enjoy. So in the S3 endpoint part 2, what we will do here? So we will create an AWS Lambda function in the private subnet of our VPC. Then why do we do that? Because we will then bypass the public internet and reduce the exposure of potential security threats, which will go via public internet. So the Lambda is in private internet and it will remain in the private internet, and it will access the S3 with its secure and private access. So this is what we will do here. Data transfer between the Lambda and S3, it is within the AWS network. It will not go over the internet. We will use for this entire infrastructure as code with CDK and Python. So those who have new to CDK and Python, you can watch my previous video of introduction of CDK with Python, how to do that. If you are not familiar with CDK, don't have to worry. I will explain everything step by step. So in this infrastructure, it avoids the needs for an internet gateway or NAT gateway for S3 access, because the public access will be not required, or we will not access the S3 with public internet. If we define our infrastructure as code, then it's making the deployment as reproducible and manageable. So whenever you need any new deployment, you can do it without any problem. And as everything is in your code, you can manage it by yourself. You don't have to worry about the stack drift or the code drift that will happen in your account. Ensuring the Lambda function, we will give the Lambda function the necessary access to have the S3 bucket content read-only access. We will also analyze the traffic patterns and identify potential security issues if we have any, because we will also introduce the VPC flow logs here. So I will also show you how to create VPC flow log with infrastructure as code. Then we will also integrate the Lambda with CloudWatch function. So it is already there. So if you don't define Lambda any permission, it has a default permission to put logs into the CloudWatch. So this will also do, and I will show you how to do that and how to view the CloudWatch logs. So the entire infrastructure will be with CDK and Python. So I hope you will enjoy this video. So now let's move on and do the practical. This is my workspace. I have created one workspace where we will initialize CDK. So initializing CDK needs one command. So for that, you can please refer to my earlier video. What is CDK and how it's initialized? What happened in the backend when CDK is initialized? You will get an overall idea how to do that. But those who already know that, you can follow me through. Those who don't know what CDK is and how it works, please refer to my earlier video, or if you want to have a summary, just follow me through. So to initialize CDK, we have one command. It's called CDK init, CDK init. And first of all, you need to have CDK installed in your machine, AWS CDK library. It needs to be installed with AWS CLI. Then CDK will work. Then the command is CDK initialization. Then the application is app. Then I need an application name. My name will be S3 endpoint. And then I need to select the language. So the language we will use as Python. So language equals to Python. So this is the command by which CDK will be initialized in my workspace with this project application name S3 endpoint, and the language will be Python. Now if I hit enter, it will do something in background. It will clone couple of repositories, and then it will create a virtual environment for me, and it will ask me to use that virtual how to use the virtual environment. It will also give me a couple of commands how to use the virtual environment, like here if you see.
VNB scripts activate .bat. So what is virtual environment? I have also explained that in my earlier videos. So whatever requirements you need for this project to be installed, it will be installed in your in this particular directory, and your project will refer from this particular directory. Rather, it will be installed in a global way. So if you have multiple projects running in your machine and both have multiple dependencies, then the virtual environment is a way to go. So first of all, to activate the virtual environment, we have this command. So source virtual environment dot activate. Then you see on the left hand side, my virtual environment has been activated, and then we need to install the dependencies. So I will use pip for installing the dependencies. You can use whatever you want. Poetry is another solution to install requirements, install the dependencies. You can also use that, but for simplicity purpose, I will use pip for the requirements installation. So now you see my all the requirements are being installed, and it will show me that yeah, it is installed. Then we can do CDK synth. So CDK synth is actually one command where your entire infrastructure will be built in a template, which template will be then deployed into your AWS infrastructure as a cloud formation. So now if I do CDK synth, then it will show me that yeah, this is a warning. So you can silence this warning, no problem. But yeah, for just for this demo purpose, you can silence this warning by setting this variable. This is a node live ending warning, which is okay to stay because this has nothing to do with your current work. So I will just ignore it, and rather than I will show you that my CDK synth has been worked. Now what we will do, we will open this repository with my IDE. So you can use whatever IDE you want. Basically, you can use Eclipse, VS Code, but for me, I will use IntelliJ IDEA. So let me open this workspace with my IDE. So I will clear the screen now and open it with my IDE. Now you see, I have opened this workspace with my IDE, and this is the stack where everything will go. If you open the stack for the first time, you will be able to see that this is an example code how to create a SQS queue with CDK. But you can ignore this. I will just delete this one, and I will create my own infrastructure. So now if you see the infrastructure, so we need a VPC first. So to create, how to create a VPC with CDK infrastructure, let's do that. So simply we have to we have to import first of all. So VPC, as you know, it is under AWS underscore EC2. So we have to import EC2. Then we have to do some coding here. Now this is the part where my VPC will be installed, and this is how we can create a VPC. So we are saying that from EC2 import this VPC, where this is the scope, and my VPC will be my VPC. This is the ID, and the availability zone will be 1. Subnet configuration, I need 2 subnets. One is the public and one is the private. And the CIDR mask is 24. So this is my public subnet and this is my private subnet. So this is how we create a VPC. And after that, as I said, we will monitor the traffic. So for that, we need a VPC flow log. So how to create a VPC flow log? So first of all, to create VPC flow log, you need to import AWS logs. So I have imported AWS logs as logs, and then this two line we have creating VPC flow log group. So first of all, you have to create flow log group, and then flow log group is that from log group, we have to define the scope, and then the VPC flow log and the retention time. I have selected the retention time of 1 week. You can select whatever you want. And then VPC, I am adding the flow log to this VPC. So which one? The one that we have created. Then I am adding this VPC to this flow log, and we need to give the flow log group. And this is where I am giving okay. All my VPC flow log will go to this particular destination, this particular flow log group. And the traffic type, I have only selected the traffic type as accept, but you can select whatever you want. So there are a couple of all and then OK, then reject. Couple of VPC flow log traffic types are there. So whatever traffic type you need, you can select it. So for now, I have only selected accept. So only the accepted traffic or only the accepted logs will be going to this flow log. Okay. Now the next part is we have to create the S3 bucket and we have to create the Lambda, and then we have to give the Lambda the access to this S3 bucket for reading the file. Now we create the S3 bucket and the Lambda. Now we have created the bucket. So this is the bucket and the ID is my bucket. The bucket name is S3 endpoint and our channel name maybe some random number. This will make the bucket unique for sure. Then I have enabled the version of the bucket as true. You can do that or you don't do that, that's up to you. Encryption by default, I have enabled the S3 managed encryption, that is the SSE S3, and then the removal policy is destroy. So whenever our stack will be destroyed, the bucket will be destroyed. So we have created this bucket now. Now we have to create the Lambda. So for Lambda, this is the Lambda code where we are saying that this is the scope and my ID of the Lambda function is my Lambda function. Function name is S3 endpoint. It will run on Python 3.11 and handler is index then Lambda handler. So this one we have to create. Then code it will take from the asset of module Lambda, which also we have to create. And then the main part. So the main part is the VPC. So our Lambda will spin up inside the VPC and the subnet it will select is the private subnet. This is the private subnet. So this is where we are placing our Lambda in a private subnet, and the timeout for our Lambda function is 5 seconds. So you can increase the timeout up to 15 minutes. So this two line is very important where we have to decide our Lambda inside the private subnet as you see in this picture. So our Lambda now is inside this private subnet and we have created the S3 bucket, Lambda function in the private subnet. Now what? Still the Lambda does not have access to the S3 bucket. Why? Because of the two reasons. First of all, the Lambda does not have permission to read the content of S3 that we have to give, and then we have to create the VPC endpoint. So let's do that. Now here you see we have created S3 endpoint now. So on option 4 we have to create an S3 endpoint. So the S3 endpoint is saying that the S3 endpoint we are creating in the VPC. So the VPC add gateway endpoint, this is the S3 gateway endpoint we are creating, and then the ID is S3 endpoint and service is gateway VPC endpoint AWS service and the type is S3. So this is how you create a S3 endpoint, and then we are creating a Lambda security group. The Lambda security group is the one where we say that allow all outbound traffic is true but no inbound traffic, and this security group inside this VPC. So this is kind of optional. You create it or you don't create it, and that's up to you. But I have created it. And the VPC endpoint, whenever you create this S3 endpoint, that is this one, it will create automatically all the routes, proper routes to for this Lambda function to go to this S3 bucket. This will be created automatically, all the route table that I will show you in the console. And then the next part, which is the important one, that in our Lambda function needs a bucket read permission, that is the grant read. This is the method that will actually ensure that our Lambda function have a read permission to the bucket. So that's all. This is the entire infrastructure. So to recap, what we have done, we have created a VPC, and inside this VPC we have created two subnets. One is public, one is private. We have created flow log group for our VPC, and for the destination log group, we have selected our flow log group for our VPC. Then we have created one bucket, which is our AWS account, and the bucket name is S3 endpoint beyond the cloud, some random number. Then we have created a Lambda function in the private subnet, which will access the bucket by how? By this S3 endpoint. So whenever we create this S3 endpoint, it will automatically create all the necessary route table configuration, so we don't have to bother about it. We have created one Lambda security group. This is optional. You can create or you don't have to create. It's up to you. And then we have given the Lambda read permission to the bucket. That's it. Now I want couple of output for our stack. Whenever our stack will be deployed, I want couple of output. So what the outputs are? So we are saying that we need the VPC ID, the VPC will be created, we need the VPC ID and then the bucket name. So the bucket name will be displayed. the Lambda function name will be displayed, and the flow log group will be displayed. You can also display the S3 endpoint ID as well, but we are not doing that. So this is simplicity. This is so whenever we will our stack will be deployed, so this output will be shown in our console, and for this you need to import the CFN output. Now the main part where I said that we need to create it. So first of all, we need to create module Lambda function. So here we create a directory, and the directory name will be module underscore Lambda. And under this module underscore Lambda, we have to create a index method. So index file index.py. So this is our Lambda. This is our Lambda function, and then we have to add couple of code here, and for sure we must have this Lambda handler method inside of it. Now this index.py holds now this code where we have this Lambda handler. What it is doing, actually it is getting the object from the content type object from the S3 bucket and its content type. So it is first selecting the bucket and then the key of that particular bucket. Now here you see in this particular code we have a event which is triggering from the bucket, but we don't need that, we don't want that. So first of all, we need to give the bucket and the key itself here in a hard coded way. So let's do that. Now here you see I have updated my bucket name. This comes from here in this tag. So S3 endpoint, the bucket that we will be creating, and it needs a key. So this PNG does not exist right now in the bucket because the bucket is empty, or the bucket when it will be created, it will be empty, and then we will upload a PNG file. So I have a Athena logo.png in my desktop, which we will upload, and then this bucket name and this key name it will take from here, and it will try to print the content or the content type of the key, that is the image. So this is how we ensure that Lambda has access to the S3 bucket and its content. So if it prints successfully the content type, then we will be sure that the Lambda can access the bucket from the private subnet to the S3 bucket. And from private subnet, how it is doing? From this S3 endpoint. So that will be our testing. So our code is almost complete. Now what we can do is we can do a CDK synth. Let's do a CDK synth to check if everything is okay or not. So it seems everything is okay. Now if we see our CDK stack set is that it is creating one Lambda function, and this is our function name. This is the where from it will take the Lambda code. It is also creating, it should create IAM policy for our Lambda function, IAM role, and it is creating one S3 bucket, and the bucket name is S3 endpoint and the random number. It should also create a endpoint, S3 endpoint. So this is our VPC flow log. The S3 endpoint should be low, I hope. CDK metadata, VPC flow log, and let's go up a bit. This is the route table. Everything is created. EC2 subnets are creating, routes are creating, subnet route table association are happening here. This is my VPC. So we see that everything is fine. Everything is okay. And so now the next part is we can deploy this stack to our particular AWS account. So how to do that? So first of all, we have to do CDK bootstrapping for this code. Now let's clear the screen and let's do CDK bootstrap. Before doing the CDK bootstrap, please ensure you have configured the AWS credentials for which you will deploy your code in this particular account. So I will deploy my code here in this account. So for that, I have configured my credentials. So to configure credentials, you need the secret ID and the access ID key. So I have given that, and the default region I am using US East 1. So by this, you can do you can configure your credentials, or you can say CDK that whenever you do CDK deploy, you can take the credentials from here. So now the next command is to do CDK bootstrap. So CDK will bootstrap our environment to the AWS account that we have selected. Now you see here it's bootstrapping the environment for this account and this region. So it will create a CDK toolkit in that particular account. You can go to this particular account and go to CloudFormation to view the stacks that it is deploying. So it will appear here. So it is deploying this CDK toolkit here, and if you go to the resource section, this is a bit odd actually. Yeah, in the resource section, you will be able to see the resources that it is deployed. Currently, it is failing because no resources are there. So maybe here, yeah, after you refresh this, all the resource will be deployed. And let's refresh this one. You can also come here. So after deployment, our CDK tool, after completion of this stack deployment, our CDK environment is able to be deploy this code to this particular account. So the pre-processing is done. So you see your environment of AWS Bootstrap is done. So if you want to know more about bootstrapping, please refer to the earlier video of CDK of mine, where we have introduced the CDK, how it works and how bootstrapping works. So I have explained that in detail. Now this is done. So what is the next command? So the next command is to deploy our code. So to do that, we have CDK deploy, and then we do not need approval, as I believe my code. So this one, so CDK deploy minus minus required approval never. So this will deploy our entire infrastructure that we have created to the particular AWS account. We can go to this account and refresh the stack, and you can see our test workspace stack is being created. Let's wait for a couple of minutes to this complete, because this needs couple of minutes to be completed. Then I will come back. Now we see that our deployment is completed. Here we see that stack ARN is given, and if we go back to stack, refresh, and we see that creation is completed and the resource creation is also completed. Everything is done. Now let's check one by one what we have done. So first of all, let's check if the VPC is created. Let's go to the VPC. Your VPC, and we see that our test workspace VPC is created. If we go to subnet, there will be two subnet. One is private and one is public, and another one is private. So two subnets is created. If we go to route table, one private route table and one public route table is created. Internet gateway should create this one. There is no need, but NAT gateway. If you see NAT gateway, there is no NAT gateway. Now the most important part is the endpoints. If you go to endpoints, you see that one endpoint is created. So this is the endpoint. This is the VPC endpoint is created, and it has two route table. And if we go to route table, it will show that one private and one public route table is associated with it. Now on the route tables, if we go to the private route table, this is the important one where our Lambda is placed. On the private route table, if you see the routes, so it says that if the route is local, it should stay in local. But apart from that, if any other route is there, then it should contact the VPC endpoint service. Similarly, on the public route table, it says that if it is in local, it should stay in local. If there is any other thing or any other route, it should contact the gateway endpoint service or internet gateway. Apart from that, if the destination is the VPC endpoint, then it should contact the endpoint. So this is what the public one. But the public route table, we are not interested one. We are interested in the private route table, where it says that if the connection goes to this destination, that is this prefix list, and if you go to the prefix list, you will be able to see the entries here, and if this is for this prefix list, and on those list the S3 is also there, and this is the prefix list, and if it belongs to this prefix list, it should go to the VPC endpoint service, and this is the prefix list name. So this is the IP address that is hosted by AWS globally, where prefix is S3. And okay, so this is the entire infrastructure or the networking infrastructure for our VPC. Let's do one thing. Let's check if the Lambda is deployed. let's go to Lambda. And we see that S3 endpoint Lambda is deployed, and if we open the Lambda, then we see that our code should be here. So this is the bucket and this is the athena.png which we are yet to upload. If we go to bucket now, S3, and we see that under buckets, we have this S3 endpoint, our channel name and the random number. This is the bucket that we have created. Now within this bucket, we will now upload a file, and on the add file section, I said that in the desktop, I have one athena.png. This we will upload, and then we will upload this file, and we will read this file from our Lambda to check if our Lambda can access the file and read its content type. Now we go back to our Lambda, and this is the testing time, and we go to this Lambda and we will test it. So what we have done in a nutshell is we have created the entire infrastructure of VPC, private subnet, public subnet, endpoint, VPC, endpoint service, our Lambda, our S3 bucket with CDK, like CDK Python, and then we have deployed the infrastructure with CDK, and now we are testing it. So if we come back to our console here, and we have to create a test event. So if we click on test, then my test event will be created. I will save it, and then again we have to test it, and this time it should, yeah, it shows the response as image/png. That means it can read the content of my bucket, and the content type is image.png because the type is png. So this is what it is showing up here. That so we can conclude that our Lambda function from private subnet can access the S3 with VPC endpoint. So the route is going through VPC endpoint. How to ensure that we are correct? So we can go to CloudWatch logs. As you remember, if we have configured our CloudWatch flow logs, VPC flow logs to go to CloudWatch. So we go to CloudWatch, and inside log groups, first of all, see if our Lambda logs are created, and we see that this is one AWS Lambda S3 endpoint. This log is created. And so Lambda is giving the logs here in the CloudWatch, and this is our log stream. This is the first testing that we have done, then loading the function, and the content type is image.png. So this is fine. Lambda is giving the log. And what is the flow log? And then we have the VPC flow log, this one. So this is the flow log. This flow log is created, and if we go inside of it, just refresh couple of time, and we see that this is the accept log. And so there is a type of this particular VPC flow log where it says this is the account, and then this is the ENI, this is the destination address, this is my source address, this is the port, and then this is the packet information, and whether the packet is accepted or not. So we can see the accept is okay. That means our privately hosted Lambda accessed the S3 bucket, and the network went fine. And so this is the Lambda going to the S3 bucket, and this is the one where S3 bucket sends back the response to Lambda. So this is fine. So we see, and we have verified from our VPC flow log that our Lambda from private subnet. So this IP is the private subnet IP. We can verify it if we go to our VPC again, VPC. And if we go to subnets and our private subnet IP, so we see the CIDR range is 10.0.10.24, and we see that the CIDR range here is 10.0.1 then 139. So this is my Lambda IP address. So we see that we have successfully connected S3 service from our Lambda, which is hosted in the private subnet. So very much interesting, right? And we have ensured that the connection does not go over public internet. It should remain in AWS network with VPC endpoint service, which is more secure, more reliable, more cost effective. We don't need a NAT gateway for this. So this is what I wanted to show in this particular tutorial, how to access how to access S3 service with privately hosted resources. The part 1 was EC2. Please check that if you are also interested in that. where we have discussed how an privately hosted EC2 instance can access a S3 service with VPC endpoint. This one is also privately hosted Lambda function can access an S3 service with VPC endpoint. So I hope you really like this video. Please like, share, comment your thoughts in the comment section. Those who are new to this channel, kindly like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Kindly let me know what you liked and what you didn't, so that I can make some videos out of you guys from the recommended one if you have something. I will be back with another exciting video. So till then, take care and goodbye.